Black flight attendant slaps woman stunned to learn she's the billionaire owner. The sound of a crisp slap echoed through the first-class cabin, silencing conversations and clinking glasses. Jasmine Carter's palm stung as she stared in horror at the red mark blooming across the white woman's cheek. 23 years as a flight attendant, never once had she lost control. Now, suspended in that terrible moment, Jasmine watched recognition dawn in the woman's steel-blue eyes. Not anger, not outrage, but something far worse, a slow, calculating smile. "Do you have any idea who I am?" the woman whispered, her voice carrying like a death knell through the sudden silence. 12 hours earlier, Jasmine had arrived at JFK International with the practiced efficiency of someone who had called airports home for over 2 decades. The September morning carried the first hints of autumn, golden light spilling across the terminal windows as she wheeled her perfectly packed carry-on through security. At 52, Jasmine moved with the confident grace that had become her trademark on Transglobal Airline's most prestigious international routes. Her crisp navy uniform fit immaculately, silver wings gleaming against the dark fabric, hair pulled back in a sleek bun that accentuated her high cheekbones and warm brown eyes. "Morning, sunshine," called Marcus, her favorite co-flight attendant, leaning against the crew lounge doorway. At 63, Marcus had been flying even longer than Jasmine, his salt-and-pepper hair and laugh lines testifying to thousands of transatlantic crossings. "You're looking suspiciously chipper," Jasmine observed, setting down her bag. "What's got you so happy at 5 in the morning?" Marcus's eyes twinkled. "Rumor has it we've got a special passenger today, very hush-hush. Corporate sent 3 emails about enhanced service protocols." Jasmine rolled her eyes. "Another entitled celebrity demanding the moon." "Better," Marcus lowered his voice, glancing around the empty lounge. "Word is Airline Hamilton might be on board." Jasmine froze in the act of checking her flight manifest. "Airline Hamilton, as in Hamilton Holdings, as in the woman who could buy and sell our entire airline without blinking," Marcus finished. "That Airline Hamilton." Everyone in the industry knew the name. After inheriting her father's modest investment firm in the 1980s, Airline Hamilton had transformed it into a global empire spanning tech, real estate, and transportation. At 71, she remained one of the most powerful women in business, notorious for her exacting standards and ruthless acquisition strategy. Transglobal Airlines had become part of Hamilton Holdings just last year, though the reclusive billionaire had yet to make an appearance at her newest acquisition. "Great," Jasmine sighed, "just what we need on a full flight to London." "Come on," Marcus nudged her shoulder. "Aren't you even a little curious? The woman's a legend. Started in the corporate world when they barely let women in the door. My mother used to cut out magazine articles about her, said she was proving what women could do in a man's world." "I admire what she's accomplished," Jasmine conceded, "but you know how these ultra-rich types can be on flights. Remember that tech CEO who demanded we rearrange the entire first class because the energy wasn't right?" The flight briefing proceeded normally, though Jasmine noted the presence of Transglobal's senior VP of Customer Experience, a rare sight for a routine London flight. The captain, a veteran named Richard Chen, made only a brief reference to ensuring our premium service exceeds expectations today, with a meaningful glance at the crew. Boarding began promptly at 7:15 a.m. Jasmine took her position at the first-class cabin door, greeting passengers with the warm, professional smile that had become second nature over the years. The 12 first-class pods filled steadily with the usual mix of business travelers and wealthy tourists, but there was no sign of anyone resembling the formidable Airline Hamilton. As final boarding was announced, Jasmine exchanged a glance with Marcus. Perhaps the rumor had been just that, a rumor. Then, just as the gate agent prepared to close the door, a final passenger hurried aboard. Jasmine's first impression was of unremarkable ordinariness. The woman appeared to be in her late 60s or early 70s, dressed in a simple beige pantsuit that, while well-tailored, lacked the ostentatious luxury Jasmine had expected. Her silver hair was cut in a practical bob, and she wore minimal makeup behind plain tortoiseshell glasses. Nothing about her screamed billionaire. In fact, she looked more like a retired librarian than one of the world's wealthiest women. "Good morning," Jasmine greeted with her standard smile. "Welcome aboard." The woman barely glanced up from her phone, offering only a curt nod before taking seat 2A. No entourage, no security detail, not even a personal assistant. Just a weathered leather briefcase and a distinct lack of interest in her surroundings. Was that her? Marcus whispered as he passed with a stack of welcome towels. Jasmine shrugged. "If it is, she's traveling incognito, no name on the manifest matches." The flight pushed back on time, and once cruising altitude was reached, the first-class cabin settled into its routine of premium service. Jasmine moved efficiently between passengers, taking breakfast orders and ensuring champagne flutes remained filled. The woman in 2A declined both alcohol and food, requesting only black coffee while she worked intently on her laptop. It was during the main meal service that Jasmine first noticed something amiss. A young man in 3C, a tech entrepreneur type with expensive casual clothes and an air of practiced nonchalance, kept glancing toward 2A with narrowed eyes. When Jasmine approached with his entree, he motioned her closer. "That woman," he whispered, nodding toward 2A. "She keeps watching me. I think she might be taking photos of my screen." Jasmine glanced discreetly at the older woman, who appeared completely absorbed in her own work, not even looking up as Marcus refilled her coffee. "I'm sure it's nothing to worry about, sir," Jasmine assured him, "but I'll keep an eye on the situation." The man frowned. "You don't understand. I'm finalizing details for a major product launch. Corporate espionage is a real concern." Jasmine nodded professionally. "I understand, sir. I'll be vigilant." As the flight progressed over the Atlantic, the cabin lights dimmed to simulate evening, and most passengers reclined their seats to rest. Jasmine noticed the woman in 2A had finally closed her laptop but remained awake, gazing out the window at the darkening sky with an unreadable expression. There was something in that gaze, a weariness, perhaps, or a loneliness, that momentarily stirred Jasmine's sympathy. The feeling evaporated an hour later when she responded to the call button from 3C. The young entrepreneur's face was flushed with anger as he jabbed a finger toward 2A. "She was standing over me," he hissed. "I woke up and she was right there looking at my documents." The woman in 2A, now back in her seat, didn't look up from the book she was reading. "Sir, are you certain?" Jasmine asked quietly. "Perhaps she was just moving to the lavatory." "I know what I saw," he insisted. "Check the cameras if you don't believe me. She's after my intellectual property." Jasmine assured him she would address the concern and approached 2A with practiced diplomacy. "Excuse me, ma'am. I need to ask if you were standing near seat 3C recently." The woman looked up, her expression impassive behind her glasses. "I was returning from the lavatory. Is there a problem?" "The gentleman feels you may have been observing his work materials," Jasmine explained carefully. Something flickered in the woman's eyes: amusement, irritation. "I have no interest in whatever that young man is working on, I can assure you." Her tone carried a dismissive edge that Jasmine recognized from decades of serving the privileged. It was the voice of someone unaccustomed to having their word questioned. "I understand, ma'am. I apologize for the disturbance." As Jasmine turned away, the woman added, "Perhaps you should ask your passenger why he's so paranoid. In my experience, those with the most to hide often make the loudest accusations." The next 2 hours passed without incident, though tension lingered in the cabin. Jasmine noticed the entrepreneur had moved to the opposite side of the cabin, casting occasional suspicious glances toward 2A. For her part, the older woman seemed oblivious, alternating between reading her book and making notes in a small leather journal. The situation escalated during the pre-landing beverage service. As Jasmine made her way down the aisle, a commotion erupted behind her. She turned to see the young man from 3C standing over the woman in 2A, his face contorted with anger. "I saw you take it," he shouted, drawing alarmed looks from surrounding passengers. "My flash drive was in my bag and now it's gone." The woman looked up calmly. "I haven't touched your belongings, young man. Please step away." "Empty your pockets then," he demanded. "Let's see what you're hiding." Jasmine intervened quickly. "Sir, please return to your seat. If something is missing, we can address this properly after landing." "After she's had time to copy everything? I don't think so." He reached toward the woman's jacket pocket. "I want my property now." What happened next occurred with startling speed. The woman seized his wrist with surprising strength, twisting until he gasped in pain. "Do not touch me," she said, her voice deadly quiet. Marcus appeared at Jasmine's side, his normally jovial face serious. "Sir, you need to return to your seat immediately, or we'll have authorities meet the aircraft." "She's a thief," the man insisted, nursing his wrist. "Check her pockets." Several passengers were now watching openly, the peaceful first-class atmosphere shattered. Jasmine felt the situation spiraling beyond her control, something that rarely happened in her carefully managed cabin. "Sir, please," she began, but the man cut her off. "I bet you're all in on it," he snapped, turning his anger toward Jasmine. "What did she pay you to look the other way? Is that how it works for you people?" The implication in his tone, the subtle emphasis on "you people," hit Jasmine like a physical blow. In 23 years of flying, she had encountered her share of racist insinuations, usually veiled, occasionally blatant. She had learned to let them slide, to maintain her professionalism above all. But something about this moment, the entitlement, the accusation, the public humiliation struck a deeper nerve. "Sir," she said, her voice tight with controlled anger, "I'm going to have to ask you to stop making unfounded accusations against passengers and crew." The man leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper meant only for her ears. "I know how this works. People like you always stick together when there's a chance to steal from successful white men like me." Something snapped. Before Jasmine could process what was happening, her open palm connected with the man's face in a sharp, decisive slap that echoed through the cabin. Time seemed to stop. Horror flooded through her as she realized what she'd done. 23 years of perfect service records, of biting her tongue, of professional restraint gone in an instant of unchecked rage. The young man staggered back, hand to his reddened cheek, his expression transforming from shock to vindictive triumph. "You're finished," he said quietly. "Completely finished." Marcus grabbed Jasmine's arm, pulling her back toward the galley. "What have you done?" he whispered urgently. Jasmine couldn't answer, her career flashing before her eyes. Termination was certain, possibly legal action, all because she'd finally reached her breaking point with one entitled passenger too many. "I'll handle this," Marcus said, pushing her gently into the galley. "Stay here." Through the curtain, Jasmine heard Marcus apologizing profusely, offering compensation, promising disciplinary action. The young man's voice rose in righteous indignation, demanding her immediate removal from the flight. Then unexpectedly, the woman from 2A spoke up. "That won't be necessary," she said, her voice carrying a newfound authority that silenced the cabin. "In fact, I believe I found what you're looking for." Jasmine peered through the curtain gap to see the woman holding up a small black flash drive. "It appears it fell near the lavatory. Perhaps you dropped it during turbulence." The young man snatched it from her hand, examining it suspiciously. "This doesn't change what she did," he said, pointing toward the galley where Jasmine stood hidden. "She assaulted me. I want her fired and charged." The woman adjusted her glasses, regarding him with a cool stare. "Actually, I believe I witnessed you making inappropriate racial comments to a crew member performing her duties." Transglobal Airlines has strict policies against passenger behavior that creates a hostile work environment. "You can't be serious," the man sputtered. "She hit me." "After considerable provocation," the woman noted. "I'm sure the airline's legal team would find the entire interaction quite interesting." She paused, letting the implication sink in. "Now I suggest you return to your seat and enjoy the remainder of our flight in silence." Jasmine's amazement, the man retreated, muttering under his breath but offering no further protest. Marcus returned to the galley, his expression bewildered. "I don't know what just happened," he whispered, "but that woman shut him down completely." Jasmine barely heard him, still processing the magnitude of what she'd done. "I assaulted a passenger, Marcus. I'm going to lose everything." "We'll figure it out," he assured her, though his voice lacked conviction. "Go take a moment. I'll cover first class." The remaining hour of the flight passed in a fog as Jasmine mechanically performed her duties, avoiding eye contact with the passengers, especially the woman in 2A who had returned to her book as though nothing had happened. As the aircraft began its descent into Heathrow, Jasmine prepared for the inevitable. There would be a meeting with the purser, a report filed, suspension pending investigation, and then termination. After all these years, this is how her career would end. The aircraft landed smoothly despite London's characteristic drizzle, taxiing to Terminal 5 as passengers gathered their belongings. Jasmine stood by the exit, forcing a smile as she thanked each departing passenger, her heart hammering in her chest. The young entrepreneur passed without a word, avoiding her gaze entirely. Finally, only the woman from 2A remained, methodically packing her belongings into her briefcase. As the last passenger exited, she approached Jasmine, extending a cream-colored business card. "I'd like to speak with you," she said simply. "In private." Jasmine glanced down at the card. Embossed in elegant silver lettering was a name that made her blood run cold. Eleanor Hamilton, CEO, Hamilton Holdings. Jasmine began, her voice failing. "Yes," the woman confirmed with a slight nod. "And you and I have much to discuss about your future with my airline." 30 minutes later, Jasmine found herself in the exclusive Windsor suite, a private lounge reserved for visiting dignitaries and the ultra-wealthy. Eleanor Hamilton sat across from her, having exchanged her plain glasses for a more stylish pair that transformed her appearance subtly but significantly. 23 years with Transglobal, Eleanor noted, reviewing a file that had mysteriously appeared in her hands. Exemplary service record, 6 commendations for handling difficult situations. Fluent in 4 languages, consistently requested by our highest value customers. She looked up, studying Jasmine with penetrating eyes. Until today, when you slapped a passenger. Jasmine swallowed hard. Ms. Hamilton, I take full responsibility for my actions. There's no excuse for what I did, regardless of provocation. Eleanor closed the file. Do you know why I was on that flight, Ms. Carter? The question caught Jasmine off guard. I assumed you were conducting some sort of undercover evaluation. A thin smile crossed Eleanor's face. Not exactly. Since acquiring Transglobal last year, I've received concerning reports about our premium cabin culture. Complaints of discrimination, accusations of preferential treatment based on race and gender, suggestions that certain passengers were being subjected to heightened scrutiny while others received excessive leniency. She poured tea from a silver pot, the expensive china clinking softly. So I decided to see for myself, not as Eleanor Hamilton, billionaire owner, but as an ordinary older woman traveling alone. And what did you discover? Jasmine asked, tension coiling in her stomach. I witnessed a young, entitled man make racist insinuations to a black flight attendant who had served him impeccably throughout the flight. I saw that same flight attendant maintain her composure until he crossed a line that no human being should have to tolerate. Eleanor sipped her tea. And then, most interestingly, I watched as her white colleague immediately assumed she would be punished rather than protected. Jasmine felt tears threatening at the edges of her vision. With all due respect, Ms. Hamilton, I broke the cardinal rule of cabin service. We never ever touch passengers, no matter the provocation. Rules, Eleanor mused, setting down her cup. I've spent my career navigating rules created by men to exclude women like me from power, rules that protected the privileged while punishing the marginalized. She leaned forward. Let me tell you about my first job interview in 1975. The interviewer asked if I could type, whether I planned to have children, and if my husband approved of me working. When I told him those questions were inappropriate, he said I lacked the temperament for business. She paused, a flash of old anger crossing her face. 3 decades later, I bought his company and dismantled it piece by piece. Jasmine remained silent, uncertain where this conversation was heading. What happened on that flight today wasn't about a slap, Ms. Carter. It was about power, who has it, who doesn't, and how it's wielded. Eleanor fixed her with a steady gaze. That young man believed his whiteness and wealth entitled him to treat you with disrespect. He assumed the system would protect him and punish you, and based on your reaction, you believed the same. The truth of those words hit Jasmine hard. She had indeed assumed the system would sacrifice her without hesitation. So what happens now? She asked quietly. Eleanor stood, smoothing her simple beige jacket. Now, Ms. Carter, we change the system. Effective immediately, you'll be taking a new position as Director of Cabin Culture and Inclusivity Training, reporting directly to me. Your first task will be developing protocols for addressing passenger misconduct, particularly incidents involving discrimination or harassment of crew members. Jasmine stared in disbelief. You're promoting me? After what I did? I'm promoting you because of what you did, Eleanor corrected. Not the slap itself, though I can't say I didn't enjoy seeing that smug look wiped off his face, but because you've demonstrated something I value far more than blind adherence to rules, authentic humanity and dignity in the face of dehumanization. She handed Jasmine a folder containing details of her new position, including a salary that made her eyes widen. We have a car waiting to take you to your hotel. Rest today and tomorrow we'll begin working on transforming Transglobal's culture from the inside out. As Eleanor turned to leave, Jasmine found her voice. Why me? You don't even know me. The older woman paused at the door. I was a 28-year-old widow with a business degree when I inherited my father's struggling company in 1982. Every bank denied me loans. Every business partner questioned my competence. Every competitor waited for me to fail. Her expression softened with remembered pain. One day, after a particularly humiliating meeting, my secretary, a black woman named Dorothy who'd worked for my father for 30 years, found me crying in my office. Instead of empty platitudes, she slapped a stack of files on my desk and said, "They expect you to fail because you're a woman. They'll be twice as satisfied if you give up. Are you going to give them that satisfaction?" Eleanor's eyes met Jasmine's with sudden intensity. Dorothy became my chief operating officer and worked by my side for 20 years until cancer took her. She taught me that true strength isn't about never showing weakness. It's about refusing to let others define your worth. I saw that same strength in you today. With that, she was gone, leaving Jasmine alone in the luxurious suite, her world transformed in the space of a single transatlantic flight. 3 months later, Jasmine stood before a packed auditorium at TransGlobal's headquarters, presenting the company's new Respect in the Skies initiative to executives, union representatives, and crew members from across the global operation. Billionaire sat in the front row, nodding approvingly as Jasmine outlined comprehensive new protocols for addressing passenger misconduct and protecting crew members from discrimination. "The sky connects us all," Jasmine concluded, her confidence growing with each successful presentation. "But for too long, we've allowed the worst aspects of ground-based prejudice to follow us into the air. Today, we're establishing a new standard, one that protects the dignity of every person who works for or travels with TransGlobal Airlines." The applause was thunderous, led by Alina herself, who had become Jasmine's most stalwart champion. The program had already garnered industry attention, with 3 competing airlines requesting permission to adapt it for their own crews. After the presentation, as attendees mingled over refreshments, Alina approached with a familiar figure in tow. "I believe you know Marcus," she said with a smile. Jasmine embraced her former colleague warmly. They had spoken regularly since her promotion, but his route assignments had kept him flying while she established her new department. "You're looking at TransGlobal's newest senior training specialist," Marcus announced proudly. "Ms. Hamilton thought I might be useful in your department." Marcus demonstrated remarkable loyalty to his colleague during a difficult situation, Alina explained. "That's exactly the kind of character we need in leadership." As Alina was called away to speak with board members, Marcus leaned closer to Jasmine. "I still can't believe how everything turned out. From career-ending disaster to corporate director in one day." Jasmine's gaze followed Alina across the room, watching the billionaire move with purpose and authority among people who deferred to her automatically. "You know what the strangest part is? If I had known who she was on that flight, I would have been terrified. I would have treated her differently, deferred to her power. And now I understand what real power is," Jasmine said thoughtfully. "It's not about wealth or position. It's about recognizing the humanity in others and standing up for what's right, even when it's hard." She smiled, thinking of the journey that had brought her here. "Sometimes the most important connections in our lives come from the most unexpected moments." Across the room, Alina caught her eye and raised her teacup in a subtle toast, a private acknowledgement between 2 women who had each, in their own way, refused to accept the limitations others tried to impose upon them. As Jasmine raised her own cup in response, she thought about all the Dorothy Carters and Alina Hamiltons and Jasmine Carters of the world, women who had faced barriers and broken through them, making space for those who would follow. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in her career, she felt she was truly flying in the right direction. "You know," Marcus mused, interrupting her thoughts, "I keep wondering about that flash drive. Did she really find it by the lavatory?" Jasmine laughed, the sound carrying across the elegant reception hall. "I've learned not to underestimate Alina Hamilton. Let's just say I wouldn't want to play poker against her." In her new office overlooking the airport runways, Jasmine kept a small, framed photo on her desk. Not of the slap that had changed her life's trajectory, but of an ordinary moment captured by the aircraft's security camera. An older woman in a plain beige suit, offering a hand to help a flight attendant steady herself during turbulence. It served as a daily reminder that sometimes, the most powerful people entered your life not with fanfare and entitlement, but with quiet dignity and a willingness to see beyond surface appearances. And sometimes, in the most unlikely moments, a single action could change everything. A hand extended in cruelty or in kindness, a word spoken in anger or in solidarity, a slap that ended one chapter and began another. For Jasmine Carter, former flight attendant and current director of cabin culture, the journey had only just begun. And 35,000 feet above the ground, where the air was thin but the perspective was broad, she had learned that true transformation often arrived in unexpected packages, sometimes even in Seat 2A.